Greetings, this is Dr. Tenbrink. Today we're going to look at industry groups. So I wanted to try something new. Last time I had a little bit of paper noise. I'm going to leave my papers on my desk here and try it with a split screen. I'm going to share. So how do you use industry grouping to help you in your role as a strategist? That's what we're going to look at. But first of all, I want to point out where we are in the course. So but first we talked about strategy over here. Let me get my highlighter on. Here we go. So we discussed strategy, what it is, right, the concept. And then we started looking at organizational strategy. We use the word organizational instead of firm because sometimes we're talking maybe perhaps about a nonprofit. They might not want to call it a firm. So I just use organizational. We began with the under organizational strategy, looking at the external strategy steps, right? So we looked at PESTLE, industry, the 5 forces, and then industry grouping is what we're going to discuss today. And then we're going to move on to another aspect, internal, okay? So why would you want to use industry groups in your role as a strategist? Well, my suggestion is because you want to compete, defend, or plan your strategy. So assessing your competitive group offers an opportunity to plan and assess how your organization and your rivals rank based on the variables that you select as important. Now, let me see if I can't move the screen. There we go. Learning as we go, right? Okay, so for example 1. This is a competitive strength assessment, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in a second. And this one is from the text, so you can always go back and look at it. So this is just one example of how a company's overall competitive position might be determined, assessed, analyzed, okay? There's other ways to do this. So what you're looking at is how does the company rank relative to competitors, and does the company have a net competitive advantage or disadvantage? That's kind of what your aim is for using one of these. And I went ahead and listed the steps, and here's what it looks like. So step 1, list the industry's key success factors. Again, that's something that you're going to have to determine because what we have right here is not necessarily what would work for your firm, okay? Assign a weight to each measure of competitive strength. Again, guess what? You have to use your brain to give the weight, right? So not only, let me go ahead and get my pointer out again if I can. So not only do you have to create the key success factors, you also have to create the weights, right? Then 3, you calculate the strength ratings by scoring each competitor. Again, that's relatively subjective, right? So that's another point where experience is a great thing, communicating with others is a wonderful thing, and then also being diligent and having a good aptitude for this, right? Okay, so then what you're going to go ahead is, and some of the weighted factors, right? And then use the overall strength ratings to, they say, draw a conclusion. So, but here's the deal. At the end of the day, I've got to get rid of this again so I can move down. At the end of the day, after you complete the analysis, you and or others would decide which aspects to address and when. So, for example, here, who gets the highest score? Rival 1 gets the highest score, right? But what I have found in my experience is there's always something like a gut feeling or something that isn't addressed in the key success factors. You want to avoid the gut feelings because that never looks very good in a business situation. So let's just say that you go ahead and you create one of these and you're like, this is maybe not right. That would lead you to believe that perhaps you need to do some tweaking and you need to go through some iterations of creating a better competitive strength assessment. And you know what? That's normal. So don't worry about that, okay? And so then what you do is you want to take action on that based on what you and your team decide to do. Something may happen in your firm and you might decide to go in another direction. That's okay. So ideally, this is done in conjunction with the organization's mission, vision, and top-level strategy. Why? Because you don't want to just go ahead and go, oh, well, rival number 1 has the highest score, and so we need to buy them or merge with them or whatever. No, not necessarily. Okay, this is just one piece of information to add into your giant puzzle of corporate strategy and corporate success, okay? So another thing I put up here is I want to make sure that you understand you could use this in conjunction with product strategy and a strategic business unit. It doesn't only have to be the top level, okay? The other thing I wanted to give you here and discuss is example 2, to create a competitive map. It's strategic grouping. These are interesting. I think these have roots in marketing, perhaps. I don't see them very often in strategy, but I think they can be, consultants use them, okay? But as an academic, I certainly don't see them very often. And when I was in the business, I generally saw them in marketing. Okay, so anyway. So this map will have axes that you create, okay? So here's one here, the Y, and here's the X. We have model variety, and this one here is for cars. And then on the side, we have price performance. Okay, so you create the axes that you think are important, okay? And then how is this used? To assist in maintaining and evaluating customer or market segmentation, to help identify where you compete and what your competitors offer. So for example, if you were Ferrari or Porsche here, would you worry about what Ford is doing down here? Perhaps not. It's a completely different business model, right? They have a ton of models. They're very they have a wide breadth of models, and their price performance, based however you want to define that, is low. Might you be worried about BMW and Mercedes-Benz? My guess is yes. Now, here's the deal. Intuitively, you might know that because you might know a lot about automobiles. But would you intuitively think, oh, well, Volkswagen and Honda is more similar to us, or Toyota? So it's really good to have a map of some of these factors to help you in explaining your position, and also too in terms of being able to tell a good story and show it. So hopefully that will work for you to add to your portfolio of strategic tools. Here's a couple of key points. A tricky part of this activity is choosing the axes. Select what is important to your product or firm. So that's really, really important, okay? And that's something that you would get by having industry or firm knowledge. That isn't something that I can tell you. Generally speaking, I can tell you that it's generally about, that's somehow related to customers. So it's sort of, in a way, customer mapping. So for example, up here, it would be almost how many customers can you attract, right, with the different models. And then also usually there's a price component, but not always. So you use this mapping approach in conjunction with forward-looking strategy. For example, if you plan to move into a new segment, what area might offer less resistance? Of course, once again, it's never as simple as you might think. You'd want to use it in conjunction with other analyses, PESTEL, 5 forces, and also with your top-level goals. So hopefully this was helpful to you. This was an example, again, of industry groups and how they might be useful. We discussed that you might have I gave you 2 examples of how to use industry groups. The first one was competitive strength assessment, and the second one was competitive mapping. And I hope you find these useful, and especially if you have a role in marketing or strategy for a brand or a product. Very, very helpful tools. And now I'm going to say goodbye and try to end this, and I can do that. Have a great day.